Suppose to women who, in the very rare circumstances that they find themselves in while they're pregnant, that the pregnancy poses a risk to their life, that there now are very clear guidelines in terms of how they can be treated. I think up to this point, doctors have operated in a vacuum. Uncertainty, depending on where you were, the attitude was different in one area to another, and that's not good. So really to women, it is about having the confidence that in the event that their lives are at risk as a result of pregnancy, that their doctors now feel confident to operate in a clear clinical manner. Multidisciplinary approach is hugely important. Our experience in some instances, not all of course, because we have a very safe health system in Ireland, but in some instances doctors operating alone hasn't been a great outcome for some women, and we need to ensure that the multidisciplinary approach is put in place. And
much of the discussion and the debate around this has surrounded suicide.
Yes.
And the question of terminations in the case of suicide. The pro-life lobby are already saying that what the government has legislated for is wrong, based on wrong information. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I wouldn't expect them to say anything other than that. But this is a very rare occasion that these circumstances would arise.
How rare do you think?
Well, it's very rare. It's extremely rare, but it does arise. It does arise, and it does arise, and we all know it arises. We've seen reports of it, but we are placing a higher bar in relation to suicide, and that's only right and proper because it is a subjective opinion. But nevertheless, a subjective opinion by, in the first instance, the woman's GP, because that is usually the first port of call, someone that knows you very well, and in the second instance by two consultant psychiatrists who will have to form the opinion that one, the woman is suicidal, and two, that the only action that can be taken in this instance is that the pregnancy is terminated. That's a very high bar. It's two different areas and a very high bar to reach.
The question is, if the bar is set so high, is there ever a likelihood that any woman is going to subject herself to that when she knows that the option that exists now will still exist then, and that is to board a boat or a plane and go across to Britain?
Well, in this instance, women will know exactly what's going to happen, and we're doing this for the very first time. They will know that there is a process, and that not alone that if the first two psychiatrists decide no, that there's not a threat to her life as a result of the pregnancy, then she has the automatic right to review.
I appreciate all that, but the logic would dictate that no woman would want to subject herself to that if she found herself in a suicidal state. So I know the law has to cover all eventualities, but the number of women who will actually use this law is probably going to be minimal.
And that's what we've said from the very outset. And that's why it is important to ensure that when women feel that they have no option other than to trigger this process, and it will be triggered by the woman actually stating that she feels suicidal as a result of her pregnancy, that the process will then be triggered, and the triggering of that process will give women the reassurance that there is a process, that it's a clear process, and it's a process that will have to be made clear to her, and indeed the medics participating in it will have to follow a very strict process. And I think that will give comfort to women. It won't be just the option of, will I tell my GP in the vain hope that I may get some treatment in relation to this. It is now a very clear process.
There is no question of floodgates being opened here, is there?
No, there is not. We have legislated strictly in line with the X case judgment and the ABC judgment. We are about to legislate strictly in line with that. And I have said from the very outset, if people want to go further than that, if it's in relation to a threat to the health of the mother, if it's in relation to other issues, then that is strictly an issue for the people, and that question would have to be put to the people, and that's not what we're doing.
Moving away from the suicide issue, the real reason why this is debated now and this legislation is being brought forward after